Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Three Technique, the college football podcast at the intersection of the X's and O's and the Jimmies and the Joes. Fellas, we have made it. Once again, week 0 is upon us, the long, cold, dark offseason in the rearview mirror, and we have real college football games that we are breaking down in not only just a week 0 preview, but guys, this is a mega episode presented by our title sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Thank you to them. Bunch of content coming up with Underdog here shortly. But guys, we're talking week 0. We're talking camp news. We're talking our playoff picks and showing you our brackets. It's going to be a jam-packed show. I'm so excited to get into all of this and really start. This is where the rubber meets the road, I think, for year 4.
Yeah, it's been so much preparation. It's been so many, just lots of words written. You had the tweet a couple weeks ago of how many thousands of words were written and hours of podcasts and videos that were made in preparation. And I can't wait to just throw all of that out as soon as we see actual games on the field, because no matter how hard we prepare, no matter how much we research, it always seems like there's surprise teams. And that's what's so great about college football. I feel like this year is going to go down as one of the greatest years in the history of this sport that we love so much, because it feels like there's a lot of parity, feels like there's a lot of teams just ready to jump up and insert themselves into the playoff picture that we aren't really considering right now. So a lot of parity, a lot of fun. There's going to be tons of upsets, and I think we could maybe even get started with that week 0. There's a really good chance that we get some fireworks in Dublin and beyond this weekend.
Yeah, no doubt. Man, you look at our previews, our playoff previews, I should say. And Garrett, it's 3 different brackets, 3 very different orders of seeding. We've got different teams that each of us are crushing on. The consensus is that there is no consensus, I think, heading into this year.
Yeah, truly not an elite team, I think, that stands head and shoulders above anybody else. And that goes kind of across the way. So when you think about like who's going to win these conferences, you might have decent ideas of who is going to actually make the playoff, but I don't think anybody has like a for sure guarantee as to who our clear cut number 1 is, like all the way across the board, and who's going to carry that throughout the season. There's not like a 2019 LSU, right? There's nobody who you just look at and say they're going to dominate the whole year. And so with that comes a great potential for parity, and hopefully, I'm starting to smell the air a little bit. It's smelling like 2007 over here. I'm hoping that we can get a little bit of crazy chaos going on, and maybe see some unexpected teams end up making those brackets.
Well, I think, are going to have some debates on those unexpected teams in the brackets later on in the show. But before we get to all of that, we've got week 0 to get to. And so, Trey, even before we talk about the games and Farmageddon in particular, had some camp news that has started to matriculate out. Quarterback battles, injury updates, which got an absolute gut punch this afternoon out of Lubbock. I'll turn it over to you, though. What stands out to you most as Pete Thamel and the powers that be start tweeting little nuggets here as we get into game week?
Yeah, I'll let you talk about the gut punch here in just a second, because I think that's hitting even closer to home for you with how much you've loved that team. I mean, the story of this offseason, right, is all of the new quarterbacks. And we've seen so many big-time programs starting new quarterbacks this year. Obviously, Arch Manning has been sharpied in for quite some time at Texas. We got some clarity at other places. Ty Simpson at Alabama was announced a couple weeks ago. Today, as we're recording this on a Monday, Julian Sayin officially announced as the starting quarterback at Ohio State. I don't think that was necessarily a shock to anybody, but he did have to go out and earn that job. Still got a few big time battles that are up in the air as we enter into the final weeks of fall camp, and as these programs start to transition into more game week prep for their first game. Notably looking at Notre Dame, who has not named a starter between CJ Carr and Kenny Minchie. That, by all accounts, has been neck and neck for the last couple of weeks. We also saw Oregon start to see some murmurs up there over the past weekend. Pete Thamel on the Pat McAfee show said that this is a true competition. We've all just kind of been assuming that Dante Moore was going to get this job because of how much he's been paid in NIL and how much he was offered to come up from UCLA to Oregon. But Austin Novosad, our boy from Texas, that was a one-time commit to Baylor. A&M wanted his services really badly, ended up at Oregon. He's patiently waited his turn as well, and is apparently turning heads in fall camp, according to Pete Thamel. And this is anyone's race at this point. So that's very fascinating to me, especially as someone who was a Dante Moore denier at this point in his career and is not really high on Oregon because I'm not high on him as their starting quarterback.
Well, exactly. I mean, you and I have both been on that block, and I was listening to a couple of other preview shows this weekend and even this morning at the office, and everybody's high on Oregon, and nobody seems to be talking about any sort of concern for Dante Moore. And then we get the news that, hey, he might not be the presumed starter. Everybody wants to talk about the flashes that he showed at UCLA, the time that he got to sit behind Dylan Gabriel, and all of those things are well and good. But until I see it on the field, until I see him leading the Oregon Ducks and winning big games in Eugene, I'm going to have those doubts. And so to hear that Novosad is pushing him for that job in spring, or I'm sorry, in fall camp, quite honestly, not a huge shock to me. What about down on the Plains? Jackson Arnold, not penciled in as QB1 of the Auburn Tigers. We had Auburn fans in our mentions saying that we had no idea what we were talking about when we labeled Auburn as a 6-6 team, a bowl hopeful. And lo and behold, it sounds like either Ashton Daniels or Deuce Knight might be the preferred option at this point because Jackson Arnold just cannot get a handle on the offense.
The good news, at least right now for Auburn, is they're not totally in trouble. They have some talent in that quarterback room, and it really should be coming together for Jackson Arnold. The worst part of his game right now is the 4 inches between his ears, and it really just seems like that's where he's going to struggle until he flips the switch, and that may not happen, right? The good news is they do have talent, so they should be able to, it's not a total like season ender. But if you're telling me that, you're going to be trotting out, for example, like Deuce Knight, you're trotting him out on the road in Waco to start your season as a possibility, I don't love your chances of starting your season strong. And they got some tough ones to start their year where they kind of need to get off and running a little bit to gain any momentum. So, I know a lot of people are real high on Jackson Arnold. I'm not necessarily a Jackson Arnold hater. I think he's got loads of talent, but man, it's disappointing to hear it's not coming together for him.
Well, on top of all of that, Auburn is going to have 3 different cooks in the kitchen calling plays this year. They have a first down strategist. Hugh Freeze is going to call plays on second down.
That always goes well.
And they have a third down strategist. And guys, I just think back to the great offenses of all time. All of them had 3 different coordinators calling plays on consecutive downs, right? Or am I misremembering history?
Yeah, didn't Steve Spurrier say that if you don't have 3 coordinators, you don't have one? I think
right.
That was his famous quote.
Look, tribunals are always just incredibly efficient when you think about how quickly things run and how efficiently things can run. So I think, yeah, just give it a committee approach, right?
Well, and even worse, better, I don't know at this point. Hugh Freeze obviously has executive authority. So if he doesn't like the play that's coming through the headset on first or third down, he can supreme overlord it and say, no, we're running this. So, man, I just start to think that Auburn might be the castle that's built on the sand. I am very concerned that the foundation on the Plains is not as stable as the Auburn faithful want to believe it is. And listen, there's so much talent out there, and there's obviously a winning tradition. When Auburn is really good, they are really good. They are a national title contender, and the talent on the roster says that they should be able to compete for that they should be in the conversation for an SEC championship and even more. And yet what I continue to see, whether it's the leaked practice clips or it's the things that Hugh Freeze says, I just am not believing that we're going to get good results from War Eagle. I think it's going to be another long year for Auburn. So, that certainly concerns me. Guys, what do we think about Michigan? There's been some national chatter about whether Michigan is going to hit that ceiling or not. Are they going to go with Bryce Underwood? They haven't named him yet. Is Mikey Keene injured? Is Jaden Davis now QB2? It almost seems like a little bit of a mess, and maybe that's gotten kind of swept under the rug given the legal news that's come out about Michigan in the recent days.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much going on in Ann Arbor, and it's going to be a talking point for me, spoiler alert, as we get to our playoff predictions. But, I don't see any way this isn't Bryce Underwood. Do you? They paid $12 million for him to come in.
You don't pay that much for a freshman to not start him game 1. You got to get your money's worth.
He would have to be abysmal in camp.
Listen, whomst among us has not gone out and bought groceries and then rewarded ourselves with the drive-through as a little bit of a treat, right? I mean, money
I want to
aside.
know. I want to know what drive-through you're rolling through. You're spending $12 million for these golden fries. I'm
I
just trying
mean,
to figure that part out.
Taco Bell these days has gotten a little uppity, but
They're getting a little
that
fancy.
point
Yeah.
aside, yeah, I mean, and Mikey Keene coming over from Fresno State, he's also injured, so that
Yeah.
kind of adds to the dynamic there too. I think maybe you could have you could have seen a world where he came in and started the season, and maybe he struggles at Oklahoma, and that's where they make the transition to Bryce Underwood to save the season or something like that. You can write that story in your head with Mikey Keene, but I just don't see with him injured. I don't see how it's not Bryce Underwood.
For me personally, when I look at this, a lot of this I think is probably smoke and mirrors from a lot of these teams that we're mentioning. You think about like Notre Dame, Michigan, even Auburn, like they have big games early in the season that will probably end up defining their season. That's why I'm kind of looking at this as a hey, they're probably just not announcing some stuff, even though everyone in the building probably knows what's going on. They just want to keep it close wraps because that gives the opponents that they're going to be facing earlier in the season less time to scout, less time to think about, who are we putting on tape? What do we want to try to go and find? I understand that it's a lot of like fun to just kind of speculate, like, oh man, I wonder if Bryce Underwood's actually good, or any of that. But it's probably going to be that, right? They don't want Oklahoma to know they're planning for Bryce Underwood in week 2, right? That's not what they're trying to put on tape.
Yeah. Elsewhere, the other couple of notes, Trey, I think you mentioned Julian Sayin off the top announced at Ohio State. So it is Arch Manning versus Julian Sayin. Colin Simmons, the edge rusher from Texas, immediately posted that notification on his Instagram story. So maybe a little bit of the Miles Garrett treatment where we're circling QB1 in red. We're going to add him to the graveyard in the front yard. And then just local news. In our backyard, I'm wearing my North Texas t-shirt from homefieldapparel.com, which 3Tech Pod for 15% off your first order over there, by the way. Drew Mestamaker, who had not made a start before the bowl game since his 8th grade year. He was the second string quarterback at Austin Vandergrift, did not make a single start in high school, starts the bowl game, nearly beats Texas State, and then he beats Reese Poffenbarger, the Albany by way of Miami transfer, and will be QB1 for Eric Morris and the Mean Green. So good on you, Drew. Proud of you and excited to see what North Texas can get going to start the season. Trey, though, the other note that you teased and you left for me to clean up is the injury news. Most notably, we had 2 running backs go down over the weekend. Alabama running back Jam Miller is down and likely out until SEC play. Broken collarbone is the rumor there. And then this afternoon, we got the horrific news that Quentin Joyner, RB1 at Texas Tech, a playoff pick of mine, will miss the season due to an ACL. The Florida wide receiver core also banged up, dealing with injuries. We know DJ Lagway is dealing with some injuries. So, it felt like maybe we got a little bit of a later reprieve to injuries out of fall camp. Didn't feel like as many guys were going down, as soon as they put on the pads, as soon as they put on the cleats and set foot on the turf. But now, just a week before everybody else gets going in week 1, you are starting to see some of those injuries mount.
We see it every year, and it's always so sad. I know Michigan also lost a 5-star freshman offensive lineman today. Yep. Texas has lost an offensive lineman. I could probably name almost any school in the country at this point that has been rumored. We had the Nussmeier rumors for a couple of weeks, and that seems to be fully cleared up at this point. But yeah, it's just an unfortunate part of fall camp. You hate to see injuries, and you especially hate to see it before they even get into a game in the fall. And in some cases, before they get into a new game for their new team, or even as a freshman year in the case of the Michigan offensive lineman. So, yeah, we hate to see it every year. We'll keep you guys updated as we hear more about injuries and how that's going to impact the season, because it always will.
Sure will. Absolutely will. 2 teams, though, that we think are healthy and ready to go, guys. Let's get into week 0. Let's talk Farmageddon. Iowa State, Kansas State in Ireland, the Aer Lingus Classic. Iowa State comes in 22nd ranked in the AP poll. Kansas State 17th ranked. Throw those rankings out. Nobody cares about them. They're not based on anything other than just made up numbers and projections at this point. It is Kansas State -3 as we head over to Potato Land. It is 11 a.m. in God's time zone on ESPN. Fellas, I'll just kick it over to you. First game of the year, first big storylines of the season is the first ranked matchup that we've had in week 0 since the year 2000. A little bit of history there, 25 years in between those matchups. And I get the feeling that not a whole lot of defense is going to be played in this one as these two teams kind of size each other up. We've got a lot of concerns and questions about varying parts of the defensive units for each team. Trey, I'll send it to you first. -3 in favor of the Mad Hatters in Manhattan seems like a tantalizing line. If you're pro Kansas State, you're probably gobbling that up. But if we've seen anything, the Aer Lingus Classic is anything but straightforward.
Absolutely. The only time in recent memory was when Notre Dame took on Navy, and it was just a very obvious talent mismatch there. But every other time in recent memory, the team that we are expecting to come in and win and start their season well lays an egg in Ireland. So it'll be really interesting. Added dynamic, though, of this one is the fact that it is a legitimate, huge rivalry game. Usually played the last week of the season. We've had a snow bowl in this before. We've had frigid temperatures. We've had all kinds of crazy weather. We're getting it very early in the season. I saw somebody on Twitter today get a little confused by the Celsius versus Fahrenheit, and they just saw 20 degrees at kickoff. I think it was a Kansas State fan. Don't mean to disparage that fan base, but just to set you at ease, that is Celsius. It'll be 68 degrees Fahrenheit, God's temperature metric at kickoff. So we get Farmageddon in good weather, and we get a game in Ireland that neither one will have I guess both will have the motivation and not be easily distracted by. I think you could make the case in the past that maybe weren't there rumors that Florida State had some practice issues last year and was maybe touring Ireland a little bit too much before. Obviously, that ended up not being their main problem for the season, but that was kind of a story that came out after they lost. The Scott Frost Nebraska thing, maybe losing a little focus playing a team like Northwestern. Both of these teams are going to be locked in on this one. And I think both of them are made to exploit the weaknesses of the other. You talked about the defensive issues, Mitch. Iowa State really struggles to stop the run, or at least did last year. Kansas State really, really struggled to stop the pass at times last year. And both of these offenses, at least on paper, seem to be able to exploit that weakness of the other's defense. I think for my pick, I'm taking Kansas State. I'm taking Kansas State -3, mostly because I've gone on record and I believe that they are going to win the Big 12 this year. And I don't think they can do that without winning this game in week 0. Their schedule just really puts them up against the wall if they lose this game, start 0-1 in Big 12 play. But I also think that they are more equipped right now to exploit that weakness in Iowa State than Iowa State is to exploit Kansas State's weakness. I am much more excited to bet on Avery Johnson and Dylan Edwards and all those other great stable of backs that they have at Kansas State to exploit the Iowa State running defense than I am a basically entirely new receiving core or a lot of guys stepping up to a starting role or a role of being the guy for the first time and building that chemistry with Rocco Beck from the word go. I looked at the depth chart today, guys. There's a lot of oars in the wide receiver section for Iowa State, and that has me concerned, especially after they lost a couple of 1,000-yard guys last year. So taking Kansas State, I think they can exploit the weakness of their counterpart on the other side of the ball a little bit better, a little bit more consistently from the word go than maybe Iowa State can.
You see doubt and hesitation in the wide receiver room up in Ames. Garrett and I see a plethora of opportunity. We see next man up. Any guy whose name is called, they're going to get the job done.
I like the dudes. To be clear, I like the dudes, and I think by the end of the year, they're going to have a great passing attack. I just don't know if the chemistry is going to be ready week 0.
Sure. Garrett, you are taking the other side of the coin, and not just for the line. You're hot and bothered about the Cyclones in this one.
Hot and bothered might be a tad bit of a stretch, but I definitely do favor the Clones here. Man, I went back and forth on this one all day. I listened to a whole bunch of previews, and there were moments I was like, there's no way Kansas State blows this one. And then there were moments where I was sitting, Rocco Beck Heisman moment, right? It was back and forth all day. And then I kind of just settled on a couple of things. The first thing I'm going to be looking at here is going to be which quarterback can take advantage of the defense a little bit more. I think obviously when you're looking at these defenses, there's not going to be a whole lot of good out there. There's going to be moments, but I'm trying to think. Okay, both of these quarterbacks had great moments, but neither of them completed 60% of their passes last year. They're going to have to take some kind of a step, and they will have had to take a step over the offseason to put themselves in a better spot now to lead their team to victory, right? Who can be a little bit more efficient, not throw the ball away, find a guy when you need to, right? That's kind of the first thing I'm looking at. Second thing I'm looking at is with those defenses being kind of bad, which defense do I trust more to just limit the explosive plays, right? Take those 15-yard runs, get them to the ground, don't let it bust for 50, right? When you get a guy that wide open streaking across the middle of the field, he catches the ball and it could be a gain of 20, don't let that break for a touchdown, right? I'm just looking for who can stop those big plays. And right now, if you're asking me, do I believe in Iowa State's ability to find ways to plug the run? And again, I don't expect them to do it very well. Or do I trust, a secondary to come together last second to stop a guy like Rocco Beck? I'm going to lean slightly in favor of Iowa State in this one, and I trust Rocco Beck just a little bit more right now. I think he's a better quarterback overall. I think he has the higher upside right now. Not the runner, obviously, that Avery Johnson is, but I think the better passer. And I think I trust him to find the guys to, work his progressions and ultimately lead that one extra drive. I think it's going to come down to one of those like Big 12 classics where it's just last team to touch the ball wins. But I think that's going to end up being Iowa State. So I'm going to take the +3 and the win for Iowa State and start them off with a nice little redemption run, as they try to get back to Arlington.
I'm with you on the shootout element of it as well. Iowa State's run defense last year was 110th in the country. They did not stop that at all. And they lost one of the big pieces in their interior, and Tyler Oyadim, who went down south to College Station. Kansas State struggled to stop the pass at times last year, very leaky in inopportune moments in the secondary, and they're having to replace all 5 starters. So, Trey, you kind of talked about it. I think both teams are equipped to exploit the defense early, maybe twist that knife into some questions that each team might have as they try and figure out their squads in competition when the bullets are flying. The other thing that I keep coming back to is that the Aer Lingus Classic just basically never works the way that we think it will. And so while I am going to pick Kansas State to win this game, ultimately, I wrote in our notes, I had game weight clarity. I think Kansas State's rushing attack ultimately carries the day, and that's both Avery Johnson with his legs, that's the running back stable, Dylan Edwards that they've got out of the backfield. I do think that the Wildcats will come out victorious in this one, but boy, I think it's going to be by the skin of their teeth. I think it's going to be one of those games that's decided in the last 2 minutes. And so I'm going to lay the points. I'm going to take Iowa State plus the 3, but I will go ahead and say that Kansas State locks this one up. Very interesting to get a storyline this pivotal, this large, and this conference defining in week 0, let alone week 1. I mean, we're not even to week 1 where everybody's playing, where we have other data points. It's Kansas State, it's Iowa State on display. We're excited to hear from you guys, the Jimmies and the Joes as well, who you're picking to win over in Ireland. We'd love to hear from you. If you are even more intrigued, definitely click on over to our week 0 fantasy lineup plays that we'll be making, presented by Underdog Fantasy. We're going to be talking about that game, I think, quite a bit. So click on over to that video after you've watched this or listened to our podcast if you want to dive deeper into that one. Fellas, let's keep going around the slate of week 0 games, and we've got Fresno State at Kansas. The Jayhawks are 12-point favorites. This is 5:30 p.m. on Fox, and all of these games, because it's week 0, very easy to put them in sequential order. It's the grand reopening of Kansas Memorial Stadium. They'll have some really sweet in-zone decals going on. Obviously, one half of the stadium has been completely rebuilt. Should be a fun opener for the season, for Lance Leipold and the boys. Jayhawks favored by over 2 scores. Fresno State, I think the best thing that they've got going for them is Matt Ince takes over at head coach after the Jeff Tedford saga last year, obviously ended due to his health. Ince comes over from North Dakota State, where he's a national champion at the FCS level. And I think he's a guy that can absolutely get Fresno State back on top of the Mountain West in due time. But This year it's gonna be rebuilding for sure. They've got just one returner from, I think they had 11 All Mountain West Conference selections last year. One guy returns from that list. EJ Warner is the new quarterback. He comes over from Rice after transferring from Temple, so kind of the well-traveled son of Kurt, NFL Hall of Famer. Storylines abound here, but mostly I think I'm pretty set on Kansas using this to warm up the engine, get the ground game going, and hopefully get Jalen Daniels some confidence throwing the football down the field.
Yeah, Alzillian Hampton is that one of 11 that you are referring to, Mitch. Amazing name. He's a cornerback. Going to be the star of the defense, but like you said, he doesn't have a ton of established help. They could be great by the end of the season. I love the Matt Entz hire. I think that he's going to be great at Fresno State. But yeah, Kansas just seems more of a complete product to me right now, even though they have a lot of transition as well. They lose Devin Neal. They got a new offensive coordinator this year in Jim Zabrowski. He's a guy that's been around the program, though. I said this on the Big 12 preview. I think Jalen Daniels is going to have a renaissance season this year. He just obviously was uncomfortable in the Jeff Grimes offense last year for whatever reason. And I think having a new offensive coordinator that's been his quarterback coach for his entire time at Kansas is going to be really nice. And I think they might get back more to that Andy Kotelnicki style that he thrived in a few years ago. So yeah, I'm taking Kansas minus the points. I think they roll here and have a great time in their new opening of the stadium and set a firm foundation for a really fun season in the Big 12.
Yeah, Trey, I think I'm with you. I'm excited about the energy, excited about how that stadium's going to feel. And then obviously I think the run game's going to be awesome. I think they're going to really get that thing off and running. Love Daniel Highshaw Jr. Big fan of that guy. He's been kind of under the radar, sitting behind Devin Neal for a little while. Now it's going to be his chance to shine. I'm excited for them and kind of hopeful that they can get this thing going because, man, when Kansas football is good, it is just a better college football landscape.
I agree. I think they could really play spoiler in the Big 12 this season. We thought that's what they were going to do in the front half of the year. We were kind of building them up to be that team. We all discounted them, and then they ended up playing spoiler in 3 consecutive weeks anyway, just kind of as a parting shot on the way out. So this year, if they get their legs under them early, maybe they get a shot at winning that rivalry game over Kansas State. That would be fun to talk about later on in the season. But yeah, I think Kansas turns the engine over. Just keep the turnovers to a minimum, and they'll roll to a comfortable 1-0. How about Sam Houston and Western Kentucky in a Conference USA showdown right off the bat? I think this is the Maverick MacGyver glory run starting in Bowling Green, Western Kentucky. Very similar to the Zach Kitley and Houston Christian narrative from a couple of years ago, where they bring in a quarterback and his offensive coordinator from the FCS level. Obviously, it does amazing things. Bailey Zappi throws for all the yards. They're running it back this year as they bring in Abilene Christian's OC and Maverick MacGyver, who threw for over 500 yards in that season opener against Texas Tech, had a whale of a season for the Wildcats last year. I believe led them to a playoff game, if I'm not mistaken. I could have that one wrong.
He did? Yes, that's correct.
But he's starting against an entirely rebuilt Sam Houston Bearcats defense. I don't know that either team is a known quantity right now, but it feels like Sam Houston is certainly more of the unknown than Western Kentucky. So I'm gonna take the Hilltoppers. They're at home. I'm probably gonna lay the points in that one.
And we do have to say that Western Kentucky has almost an entire new team too, but this is something that they're used to at this point. Every single year, it seems like they're churning through an entire roster. The only question to me is, does it work regardless of denomination? Because it worked with a Baptist school. Does it work with a Church of Christ, I think is what Abilene Christian is. I'm not 100% sure on that, but it doesn't matter.
Pass the plate.
Yeah, I think that my only note on this game is to take the over. It's 60.5, and I think there's going to be a ton of points scored. Don't underestimate Phil Longo's offense to maybe make this interesting. Love that hire. Love him coming back home to Huntsville, and love that he is going to be able to have some continuity on offense. He has Hunter Watson back at quarterback, but this is probably going to be a shootout for about a half, and then I don't know that Sam Houston has the horses on defense just yet to get enough stops, and Western Kentucky leaning a little bit more that they do. So yeah, I'm with you. Take the over, probably lean Western Kentucky -10 since they're at home, but definitely take over 60.5.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot more notes than that. The only other things that I would have written down is take Western Kentucky -10 and apologize to fan of the show Phil Longo, famous follower of the show over on Twitter. Yeah,
Probably our
just gotta
most famous
apologize.
follower, actually. Well, I don't
Possibly.
know.
Ooh, definitely
I don't
not.
know.
No
We're
offense to
getting
Phil
up there.
Longo.
We're
No
getting.
offense to
He
Phil
was.
Longo, but we've got some pretty famous folks that are
Yeah,
following
He
the
was
show.
our
I'm just saying we
most
gotta
famous.
apologize because we're all gonna kind of just sit here and love Western Kentucky for a second, and that's totally fair of us to do. But Coach, if you're watching, if you're as avid a follower of the show as we think you might be, then we apologize, and I don't know, give us some press creds or something, and maybe we'll come down there and hang out.
Well, if the stories are true, he is probably searching for Sam Houston content during team meetings. So,
True.
yeah.
There, he's where he
Love
belongs.
you,
That's for
Phil.
sure.
Love you,
Hi,
Phil. I
Coach.
hope you're listening. Yeah.
Yeah, he's right where he belongs. He's back home. Hopefully, has a long tenure there, and then in his own words, he'd love to retire there. He would love for this to be his last gig. So hopefully, he rebuilds the Cats and gets to go out on top. Guys, let's go to the islands for the final game on our run sheet. The Hawaii Rainbow Warriors, 2.5-point favorites against the Stanford Cardinal. Say less, gentlemen. Give me Hawaii, and I'm going to lean right into this. Micah Aliado probably leaving a very potent Bows attack. We don't really know what we're going to get from Stanford. Ben Branson, the Oregon State transfer, is quarterbacking for the Cardinal. This is an organization that is just kind of famously in a little bit of disarray, truly a year zero rebuild. They don't even have a full-time head coach right now. Andrew Luck is, GMing his khakis off, but it's probably going to take a little bit of time to get Stanford back up and running. This just feels like a terrible spot for Stanford without an identity, going to the island, and Hawaii's somehow learned how to play defense as well coming into this year, guys.
And Hawaii, the last few years under Timmy Chang, has been really, really good when they're playing at home. That's worth more than a few points when they're at their home stadium, not traveling to the mainland. So yeah, I'm with you again, Mitch. I've got Hawaii minus the points, and Michael Aliato, watch out. Remember that name because he's going to put up some gaudy numbers in this offense this year. He has a fun receiving core. His one start last year, he threw for over 400 yards and 5 touchdowns against New Mexico, which I know is just a step above playing air last year, but it was still really, really impressive to watch him do it.
Yeah, my big thing on this one is that Captain Andrew Luck tweeted out that scouts report the Warriors they face are powered by a rainbow. That doesn't sound like anything I want to mess with, so I'm going to go with Hawaii on this one.
Yeah, we're recording this late enough in the evening to where I don't really want to throw in an extra production element, but the more that Captain Andrew Luck tweets, the more that you'll probably hear the drum and fife return to the old podcast.
Chance.
Trey and I did a show, a couple months ago now at this point, where we read a letter from the front, and that might have to be a regular staple of the show if Stanford's making some noise. So, yeah, I think if nothing else, for me, I need to see Stanford find an identity. I need to figure out what on earth they're going to look like on both sides of the ball. They're obviously going to have an up-tempo, explosive offense to try and defend, a scrappy defense at the very least from the Rainbow Warriors to try and go and score again. So the good news is we don't have to download any sort of app. We don't have to illegally stream or use a VPN to watch this. It's on CBS. It's 6:30 p.m. So a great.
Not that we would do
time.
anything like that. We would never do anything like that.
No, of course not. Of course not. No shady ways have ever been used by anybody in this great country to watch Hawaii football. But yeah,
Team
you're right,
One
Trey.
Sports was free and legal, guys. I don't know what y'all are talking about. It was a free and legal app. And the people on the islands had to do pay-per-view, and they might have.
I think it just felt illegal because of how sketchy the app kind of was.
Listen, don't pretend like it when we were in college. Ben didn't have some interesting ways of pulling up games, and Hawaii was certainly one of those.
You're definitely right about that.
All right, well, those are our week 0 previews and picks. Write in, let us know where you fall for this week. I think overall we're just thrilled to have college football back. Obviously, we get the main event right away, but certainly some entertaining football to be played throughout the rest of the day. And then it just sets up week 1 where we have an absolutely loaded slate, ranked matchup after ranked matchup. It is going to be a fantastic couple of weeks, holiday weekend as well coming up. So we'd love to have you be a part of it if you were just finding the show for the first time. If you are not new, if you're a regular Jimmy and Joe, you know that our playoff predictions are due, and that's what we're doing next here on the show. We'll do playoff predictions, and then we'll get into the season-long lineup presented by Underdog Fantasy at the end, if that works for you guys. I'll let one of you guys go first. Garrett, maybe we haven't talked playoffs with you all that recently, so we'll start with you, and I'll give you a second to pull up that graphic. There it goes. You've got an interesting four for the folks on the podcast side. You've got Alabama as the number 1 team in the country, Clemson at number 2, Penn State at number 3, and Arizona State at number 4, getting that first round bye. Take it away, my friend.
Well, the first thing I'm going to say is for anybody out there who questions me on this, I did my math, but then my dog ate my homework. So don't ask me about the exact particulars on some of these. I did do the math, though. I did figure out how all of this works. No, I'm really high on Alabama this year. I think that Alabama is going to be a very good football team. Love their defense. Love a lot of what they have going on. Yes, I know they just lost the running back, but still pretty high on what they're going to be able to do and accomplish this year. And also kind of like the way some of their schedule sets up. I know that it's not necessarily the easiest schedule we've ever seen, but in terms of what I think that they are and the boost that the new offensive coordinator coming in is going to end up being, I'm pretty high on Alabama. So I have them as my 1 seed. I do have them winning out, going undefeated. I also have the same for Clemson, have Clemson going undefeated as well. Just think that the committee is going to respect Bama's undefeated a little bit more than they're going to respect Clemson's. I do have Penn State losing in Columbus, but then avenging themselves in the Big Ten championship games. That's kind of why I have them at the number 3. Is they're a 1-loss team. I've got Arizona State as my number 4. I think they're going to have a really good season. Just really, really pumped about them. Kind of filling out some of that, looking up at kind of that Bama quadrant. I got Texas and Texas Tech because I know that the committee loves finding a way to put fun matchups on that first little round. And I can't imagine anything more fun than kind of matching those 2 teams up and letting the hate just spew over. So I got them up there with Texas advancing. Obviously, Ohio State and Georgia Tech up in that Clemson quadrant. I don't think it's controversial to say that Ohio State's going to be good. I think they're still going to be a good team. They might struggle a little bit out of the gate, but I do think they're going to be a very good football team. I do have them winning this week 1 game pretty close. It's going to be tight, but I do have them winning a pretty tight first game of the season. And then I think it's the Penn State. And I do also think I think I had them losing also to Michigan and Ann Arbor because I just don't believe it until I see it. I'm sorry, I just don't. So you can get over the hump and then come complain at me. But that's that. I've got Georgia Tech also in there. I think all of us have been pretty high on what Georgia Tech can do and get done. So I'm going to throw them in there as well. Georgia and Oregon. I know Oregon's the one that you guys aren't going to like, but I don't care. I think they're a good football team. I believe in Dan Lanning, and I just think that they're proven enough. I believe that Dan Lanning deserves our benefit of the doubt right now. He's done a bunch with what he's had. He's found ways to motivate that team. I think, Bo Nix wasn't necessarily a guy that we were excited about when he showed up there. Dan Lanning helped turn him around to get stuff going. Whoever that quarterback ends up being, I think is going to be just fine. And then I think a not so controversial would be Notre Dame and Boise State in that last little quadrant. My final 4 is going to be Bama versus Notre Dame, with Bama advancing, Clemson and Georgia, with Clemson finally getting over the hump, and then Clemson winning a title this year. I think that they're the best team in the country. I think that Cade Klubnik is going to be your best quarterback this year. I think he's going to go off for all the yards and all the touchdowns and everything that he wants. Just really excited about his game. And I think that with the receiving core that they have, the way that I expect them to play on offense, I think they'll be better on defense, but I don't necessarily think they're going to have to be, because I think Clemson's offense is going to be high octane from the word go. So, yeah, give me Clemson winning a championship and letting the rumors of, Dabo not being able to adjust to this era and all of that stuff, let that fly out of the window, right? Go Clemson.
Yeah.
So you have – go ahead, Mitch.
Well, I was going to say 3 SEC teams, 3 Big Ten teams getting in at the expense of 2 Big 12 teams and 2 ACC teams. Trey, I know you are not necessarily on the shared bandwagon that Garrett and I are fueling the furnace with to try and get other teams, multiple teams from Big 12 and ACC in. I'll turn it over to you. If you got a question there, go for it. If not, also I'll let you go next on your playoff picks.
Yeah, I know you said the math might get a little fuzzy, so I don't mean to put you on the spot, Garrett. But so
Yeah.
I'm guessing Oregon 2 losses.
Yeah, it would be so the way that I had it rotating is Ohio State has one loss in the season, but they had the tiebreaker over Penn
Hmm.
State by beating them. Penn State has a tiebreaker over Oregon by beating them. And
Gotcha.
Oregon, it's all a bunch of one losses, but then it's the
Sure.
Ohio State Penn State matchup in the conference championship game.
Okay, and then do you have Tech 11-1 going into the Big 12 championship, or do you
I,
have them getting that 9 seed with
I
3
do
total
believe so,
losses?
yeah.
Okay, gotcha. I think that's the path. So
I'd
I'm
have to go back
guessing.
and check my notes, but that is what I think that I did to get them there.
Listen, and I don't want anyone to hear me saying this as someone that doesn't want to see 2 Big 12 and 2 ACC, because I would love nothing more than getting multiple representatives from the Big 12 and ACC. I think that would be great for college football, and I think there's deserving teams, and there was probably multiple deserving Big 12 teams last year, even though they only got one bid. But I just have trouble seeing the world where both of those get 2 teams in. And I know that that's pessimistic, and I know, and don't hear me saying that I
Fun
don't want
police.
it to happen, but I
My
do have to be the fun police a little bit. And I just wonder if the committee would let that happen, especially when you have a Notre Dame as high as 5. You have to have that spot for the G5, of course. And I don't know,
my
I want it to happen.
my big thing on this is just I'm also not as big on the rest of the tops of the conferences. I think there really are a whole lot of good teams, but like I could see, for example, in the SEC, any combination of Florida, South Carolina, LSU, Texas A&M just beating up on each other, and then all sitting somewhere at 9-3, right? Where just none
For
of them
sure.
are going to get in. I also feel the same way about teams like Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, like a bunch of them where it's just like, hey, I think a lot of the Big Ten teams are just going to find a way to stay kind of middle high in the pack and not quite jump up over the top. I don't necessarily believe in any of their clutch genes right now. I don't think that there's a good enough team to overcome that kind of a thing, right? And so that's why I think that this is a real opening for some pretty good conference situations. For like example, Georgia Tech really loved the schedule. I think they're going to be able to go on a big run and win a whole bunch of games, possibly stick close with a couple of teams. And so, like, yeah, I'm going to stick them at the 10 seed because I think that makes sense. But yeah, I mean, far be it from me to say that the super conferences aren't going to get their way because monies and dollars and matchups and whatever else, right? I think we all know in the back of our minds there's a good chance that that's the reality.
Yeah, I think the way that it does happen is if both a Texas Tech and a Georgia Tech, or whoever those teams of choice are for you personally, the listener, the runners up in the Big 12 and ACC are 11-1 going into those games. That's the way that they have a shot in my mind, because that's what happened to SMU last year, and that's why SMU got in over Alabama. They were 11-1 going into the ACC championship, and they took a second loss instead of a third loss. So if they
Yeah.
both just take a second loss, then it's certainly possible.
Well, so Trey, go ahead and roll into your playoff bracket right now. I think you make a lot of good points. I'm curious to see how you navigate the SEC and the Big Ten, beating each other up probably on one hand, but also getting maybe more than 3 teams in. Your top 4 seeds also rolling with Alabama at 1, Ohio State at 2, Clemson at 3, and Penn State at 4. I'll let you break down your bracket.
Yeah, very similar to Garrett. I'm high on Alabama this year. I think that offense is going to be just absolutely scary with a quarterback that knows how to run the offense. No disrespect to Jalen Milroe, but he was a square peg in a round hole in that offense that Kalen DeBoer wanted to run last year. You get Ryan Grubb back, and I think it's going to be fireworks. And I think there's a lot of talent on defense, especially in the secondary. So I have Alabama across all of college football. My I guess somewhat hot take is I have 0 undefeated teams this year. If you've been following along on our graphics, the late in preview season here, you might have noticed that everybody has at least one loss. I do not think there will be an undefeated team in all of college football this year. That's how strongly I believe in the parity. So I have a 12-1 Alabama getting the 1 seed over a 12-1 Ohio State. I'll talk about their one loss here in just a second. And then I have Clemson going 12-1 in the ACC, and Penn State getting the 4 seed at 11-2, with both of their losses coming to Ohio State. So I don't think Penn State gets penalized for playing that extra game against Ohio State too much, and they fall down to the 4 seed. Georgia, I have losing to Alabama in the SEC championship. They'll be the 5 and slot against Boise State. I really wanted to find someone other than Boise State to put in here, but it's just really hard with the schedule that the Broncos have, the talent that the Broncos have. It's hard to find a world where they're not 11-1. And if you want to put a Tulane in there, they have multiple games against power conference competition and a tough American schedule. If you want to put a UTSA in there, they basically got to run the table in the American after, hopefully in our minds, losing to Texas A&M week 1. If you want to put a James Madison in there, right? Like, I think James Madison of all those teams has the best shot to get a Power 5 win when they go to Louisville week 2. I have Louisville 10-2, and I think that would be a huge win if they're able to knock off the Cardinals somehow. But too much just meleeing, bare knuckle brawling in the Sun Belt for my liking to pick them over a Boise State. So they're the 12 seed until proven otherwise, and they're the G5 representative until proven otherwise. I've got Georgia knocking off Boise State to advance to play Penn State. In the top quadrant of the bracket, I just basically made this into the SEC corner. And I think the committee, in my bracket overall, I have 4 SEC and 3 Big Ten. And I think that pendulum kind of shifts this year towards the SEC. It was towards the Big Ten last year. I think the committee kind of throws the Big Ten a bone and puts all of the SEC teams on one side of the bracket. So in this top corner, I've got a 10-2 LSU taking on a 10-2 Texas. That game would be at Death Valley. So I have LSU advancing to take on Alabama. And then Alabama and Georgia advancing to the semifinal on that side of the bracket. Georgia upsetting Penn State in that quarterfinal round. On the other side, it gets a little spicy. So I've got Kansas State winning the Big 12. I said that earlier in the show when we were previewing Farmageddon. And then this is where it gets just a little, I tied myself in a knot. I texted Mitch at 7 a.m. this morning and said, hey, could you hold off on posting the ACC graphic? Because I tied myself in a bit of a knot. And he said, LOL, it went out 5 minutes ago. And I said, okay, we ride. It's fine. So I've got SMU in the 10th spot. And a lot of people think SMU is going to take a step back this year. I don't necessarily, I hear that. Like, I'm not saying that you're wrong, and I'm not saying that that's something that's not going to happen. But I like the schedule. I like that their biggest games are at home. I see the path to them going 10-2 and getting back to Charlotte. And then in my world, SMU is 10-3. Texas Tech is 10-3. They're up for one of those last at-large spots, and I think we really get into the gross beauty contest of comparing losses. And we start to look at losses for SMU being a little bit higher quality than the losses for Texas Tech, and that's why I gave SMU the nod there at the 10. I have Kansas State beating SMU, moving on to play Ohio State. Then the last little corner there, boy, would this be fun. Notre Dame at the 6 and Michigan at the 11.
Wow.
But here's how Michigan gets there. They start 3-3 and then reel off.
Keep going. I'm loving
and
it.
then reel off 6 straight wins, including knocking off the Buckeyes for like a 10th straight year to punch their ticket at 9-3. And it's gross, and I hear you, but that's how much parity I think is going to happen this year in college football. I've got Michigan continuing that hot streak, knocking off Notre Dame in South Bend in the first round. Ohio State and Clemson advance to the semifinal, and then I've got Georgia over Clemson in the national championship game. The defense rests. Let me hear it.
My goodness.
Roast me.
You know, seeing that Maze M right there, Trey, I knew I liked you.
That's some takes right there.
This is for fun. And real quick,
is.
I should have said this off the top because this should, and maybe I'll edit this. We can edit this into the front of the video. If you are going to just send me, and I think Josh Pate said something along the lines of this the other day when he made his playoff picks. So Josh Pate co-signed on this. If you're just going to clown me without sharing your picks, I'm just going to ignore you.
Yeah.
Like, right. I'm not like, this is for fun, guys. Like, this is Like, we don't know who's going to be the 11 and 10 seed. It's going to be
Nobody can.
who had
so
Indiana last year. So if you're just going to clown me for being bold and having fun, you can go somewhere else with that, and we're just going
right.
to have fun over here.
Well, exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, we're the ones, and there's some other shows that I think have put out these disclaimers as well. One, nobody. This is an impossible exercise. We are setting ourselves up for failure by putting our picks out there on the line, and then going an extra step further to show the work. Right? I released an article to our Jimmys and Joes over on our Substack that everybody else will get tomorrow or Wednesday. But that was the kind of the introduction to my article was, hey, we're taking the step forward by showing our math here. And so we want to have that discussion. And I would love to know who your 12 picks are. I want to know who your
Just
conference
share the 12
championships
with
are.
me.
Exactly. But then share them and show me your work with how you got there. Because even though you may be coming across this clip in the pod or our graphic in a millisecond on Twitter. You may not be following the show and come across it because someone in your social circle shares it, and it's really easy to have a snap judgment to it in that one moment. But the point of these graphics that we want to convey, and obviously our Jimmys and Joes know from our preview season, we did over 30 episodes setting up these graphics in the preview season. Like, there are literally hundreds of hours of research gone into this. Doesn't mean any of it's right, but boy, the effort, the passion is there. And at the end of the day, you're right. I mean, it's fun. We're having a good time with this. There are some rooting interests we have in these graphics, and we know that not all of them are going to be right, which, Trey, I think is a fantastic disclaimer. Thank you for setting me up. Let's go to my bracket now with no strings attached and no possible way that you could pin me in a corner here. Let's talk my bracket. Unlike Trey, I have just fully taken the bait on at least one undefeated team this year, and that is the Penn State Nittany Lions. I'm going to go with them as my top overall seed. Is this the year they break through? I don't know, but I'm really hoping it is because, boy, that roster is intimidating, and I love their coordinators. Clemson's my 2 seed. Georgia is my SEC champ and my 3 seed. And the Texas Tech Red Raiders, the Quentin Joynerless Red Raiders, are my 4 seed. Again, I put this out ahead of that injury news. It is what it is. In my other seedings, we have Boise State getting the 12, Georgia Tech making it to the playoff in the 11 spots, the Iowa Hawkeyes riding to the 10 spots, Alabama at 9, Arizona State at 8, Texas at 7, Ohio State at 6, and Notre Dame at 5. So quadrant by quadrant, give me Alabama to beat Arizona State, the Big 12 runner-up. I do have 2 teams from the Big 12 getting in, Arizona State and Texas Tech. I think Arizona State is probably going to be a little bit better this year than they were last, but they're not taking anybody by surprise this year. And like you guys, I am also high on Alabama. Not number 1 team in the country high. I do have them losing a couple of road games this year, but I really like the roster and I like the system in place for the Tide this year. So Alabama moves on. Notre Dame will beat Boise State. I've got Texas over Iowa. Hawkeyes, thanks for playing. I am crossing my fingers that this offense works. And I tweeted a reel on our Twitter account and put it on our Instagram as well. That scene in Oppenheimer when he's talking about quantum physics and nuclear fission and saying how they both can't be true, but they are. It's paradoxical, yet it works. That's what Iowa football feels like to me if it does explode this year, is we're just not used to them having a good offense. But maybe Mark Gronowski and Tim Lester are the recipe, the secret formula that we need. And the Hawkeyes can go 10-2. There's definitely a path to get them to the playoff based off of their home road splits. And I'm going to believe in the Hawkeyes this year. I'm higher on them than my in-laws are. So, take that for what it's worth, a grain of salt, all the grains of salt if you want. And then I've got Georgia Tech making the playoff as well. They will lose to Ohio State in that 6-11 matchup. I'm also high on the Buckeyes. I like them to make it to the Big Ten championship game, but I'm going to take Penn State to not beat them once. I'm going to take them to beat them twice. I know how crazy that sounds, but it's where we are. The semifinals will be Clemson over getting to the semifinals. Clemson will beat Texas. Georgia will beat Ohio State. Penn State beats Alabama. And Notre Dame beats Texas Tech. That gives us a semifinal matchup of Penn State and Notre Dame, a rematch from last year. and Clemson and Georgia. I've got Penn State and Clemson moving on to my national championship. And I have the Clemson Tigers ascending back to the mountaintop of college football. I think Cade Klubnik could be the Heisman winner this year. Dabo Swinney may be the coach of the year, depending on how well Clemson actually does. But it's been too long since Clemson has been a legitimate title contender. I think they put all of those doubts to rest this year. I think their roster is fantastic. I do think I trust their offense a little bit more than Penn State's if you put them head to head. So give me the Clemson Tigers to hoist the national championship trophy at the end of the year.
Hey, I like it. I love the work, and I love you going out on the limb for Iowa. I love that call.
It is a limb.
There's a few teams in the Big Ten, and I think the recurring theme that I keep coming back to in the Big Ten, and why I think the Big Ten only gets 3 teams in this year, is that that middle tier has risen up so much that we can't just pencil in 1 or 2 at the top to go undefeated, right? We can't just pencil in an Oregon to go undefeated because there's no one in the middle to challenge them, because there's a Washington and an Iowa and just so many other opportunities for loss outside of playing Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan. So I think that Iowa is a perfect example of that. They have those big games at home. It's a fun call out for a team that we're really excited to root for this year. And again, you guys really believe in 2 Big 12, 2 ACC, and I love you guys for that. And I love you for sticking to your principles.
I just believe more in Georgia Tech, and I think that Mitch and I can ride that thing until it's done. But we're gonna find that rambling wreck, and we're gonna hopefully ride it all the way to glory. I think we both had them against Ohio State in our first round, which would be a lot of fun. So yeah, I think our only real disagreement there was just the Arizona State Texas Tech flip right there, and then who gets in the Big Ten. And but yeah, I think your graphic's pretty good, Mitch. I like this bracket a lot. It looks pretty similar to a bracket I made, so I'm gonna just say that you did pretty good. And man, what a genius over here.
They are rather similar. There's no doubt about that. All right, well, like we said, write in. Let us know where you agree, where you disagree. Show your work. Let us know who you would have in that 12-team bracket. We would love to get as much feedback as possible and then be able to review this as we go along. I mean, gosh, do any of us think that this is even going to survive the month of October? Probably not, but boy, it's going to be a lot of fun getting there. Final segment on this week 0 preview mega episode kickoff fiesta is our season-long lineup presented by Underdog Fantasy. Garrett, while you pull that up, I will let you know that you can play just $5 and get $50 in bonus funds instantly for first-time players when you use our code 3TechPod, whether it's college football, NFL, or the MLB playoff race. It's never been a better time to join us on Underdog Fantasy. And they're even still offering the 50% deposit match up to $1,000 if you are a new player that signs up using our code. Underdog Fantasy promotes responsible gaming, must be 18 plus or 19 plus in Alabama and Colorado and Nebraska for some games, and 21 plus in Arizona and Massachusetts, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369. Gentlemen, let's talk some season-long lineups presented by Underdog Fantasy. And is this my lineup that is up first? It sure is. As you can see on screen, if you are watching on the YouTube side, we are wagering Kicks Coin this season, and we will have a weekly pick'em series, basically where we build a lineup for that week. We are wagering Kicks Coin. Obviously, if you would like to follow our advice, you can, but please know it is not financial advice. We are not advocating for you to go spend that hard-earned American currency on any one direction or the other. So there's the disclaimer. Follow at your own leisure. But for my picks, and I'm not going to lie, the recording emblem is blocking the top one. I've got Drew Aller going higher, 2649 and a half passing yards. Trey, you pointed out in the pre-show meeting, Drew Aller got there last year to this number, and the offense was not all that good through the air. That was basically all the yards that he threw to his tight ends, and not really using the wide receiver core. We're very high on the new stable that they've got there, so give me Aller higher on his passing yards. Give me the lower end of Jackson Arnold getting to 2,749 and a half passing yards. We talked about this off the top of the show. Arnold's not necessarily the starting quarterback down on the Plains, which is really scary. And I actually just retweeted over at 3Tech Pod a clip from Hugh Freeze's press conference where he was asked if all three quarterbacks could play against Baylor. He said yes. That is a very real possibility. Guys, we've heard of, a 2-quarterback system. May I introduce you to the quarterback trifecta? Give me all of the lower plays on Jackson Arnold there. I'm going to go higher on Jaden Ott, the Oklahoma running back, to get over 724.5 yards. I think if Oklahoma is a better team offensively, Ott's going to be part of the engine that drives that. Oklahoma wants to run the football, and Ott is a very, very good running back to have lead that backfield. Similar vein, I'm going to go 2 other running backs here to finish out my card. I'm going to finish with Jonah Coleman going higher, 874.5 rushing yards, and Katron Allen going higher, 804.5 rushing yards. I know with Katron Allen, that's probably the bigger risk because he shares the backfield with Nick Singleton, and that objectively is a lot of rushing yards for both guys to get as they both chase the the career rushing total at Penn State. The Jonah Coleman line, though, I think there's a lot of value there. I think Coleman is going to rack up all of the yards in that Washington offense. He was a bulldozer last year. I'm excited to see him come back this year. Them's my plays. 5 season-long plays, 100 kicks coin. If the total on that one is not accurate to 100, whatever you want to wager, nuggies, dollars, etc. But the payout is pretty nice, no doubt.
All right, well, I can go with mine next, and we've got that up on the screen here on YouTube. I also have Drew Aller for the reasons that you mentioned, Mitch. He had the only reliable receiver that he had last year was a tight end, and I'm really high on that receiving core. He was higher than that number last year, and I expect him to be higher than that this year, and he might be in a few closer games where they need to air out the ball just a little bit more as well. I, after that, have Jeremy Bernard, and you might be wondering why I didn't get in on the now 18-year-old phenom wide receiver at Alabama, but I'm higher on Jeremy Bernard in this instance because I really like the value here. 699.5 receiving yards for the season. That's a number that he went higher than last season. And I'm really high on this Alabama offense. If you remember the last time that Ryan Grubb called an offense at the collegiate level, there were 2 wide receivers that went over 1,100 yards. Now, do I think that both Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard will go over 1,100? Probably not. But I think that they will. Jeremy Bernard, this is a guy that led Alabama in receiving for 5 of the last 6 games last year. He is a big, big part of this offense. And I'm really excited to see what the numbers that he can put up with Ty Simpson throwing him the ball. Speaking of Ty Simpson, this number I really like here too. I'm going to take higher than 2,899.5 passing yards for Ty Simpson. Same idea here. I love the offense with Ryan Grubb. This is going to be an offense that airs it out a little bit more. And I think this is a number that Jalen Milroe went over higher than last season as well. So I think this is going to be a situation where Ty Simpson fits the offense better, can hit those intermediate throws that Ryan Grubb loves to call. And this is going to go higher for Ty Simpson, in my opinion. And lastly, Miller Moss. It's a big number here, but I'm going to go higher than 2,999.5. So just round that up to 3,000. Miller Moss will throw for 3,000 yards this year in my mind. This is an offense under Jeff Brom that has allowed Jack Plummer and Tyler Shuck to both throw for higher than 3,000 yards the past 2 seasons. Mm-hmm. Miller Moss, in my mind, has a much higher ceiling than those 2 guys. With all due respect to Jack Plummer and Tyler Shuck, I like Miller Moss's ceiling in this offense more. I also like the weapons that he has to throw the ball to a lot this year. So give me Miller Moss throwing for more than 3,000 yards or 3,000 on the dot. If he wants to do that, that makes sense for me as well. Again, 100 kicks coins, that max payout is going to be 990 kicks coins. Wouldn't that be nice to have on the season?
Pay a few bills.
Not too bad. Just to finish it out with some of my picks, going to go with Cade Klubnik higher than 28.5 passing touchdowns. If Clemson is going to have the season that I think that they do, then that's going to have to be definitely a play that happens. So I'm gonna rock with that for a minute. Jeremiah Love, I know we all love him. I think he's got a bunch in store for him, and that's going to be a whole lot of their offense as well. So I'm also going higher than 13 and a half rushing touchdowns for him. Just really think he's going to be a focal point of that offense, and that, again, if they're going to have the season they want to, that's what they want to do. A lot of that rushing is taken off of not the quarterback position this year, so he's going to have to fill that void. I also really like the Ryan Williams higher than 9.5 receiving touchdowns. He had 8 last season. He's a legal adult this year, so that helps. He's developing, and I think that we also really like this offense. I know that we've talked about it a lot. Trey and I definitely pretty high on him, Mitch as well too. So thinking that the higher than 9.5 receiving touchdowns is almost, it seems easy to me. And then Decorian Moore, I'm a big fan of Oregon this year. I think that somebody has to catch passes. And so I'm going to say that he goes higher than 699.5 receiving yards. That puts him in the 700-yard plus range. I definitely think that that's one that he can hit. Definitely think that that's one that will definitely work for him. And so I think that, if it's going to have to go somewhere in that offense, we've seen freshman receivers start to perform. And so I think that this is going to be where he gets his moment to shine. So my picks there, that's 100 kicks coins. And I got the 9.52x. It'll be 952.
I like the Decorian Moore pick. I think if Oregon is certainly going to reach that ceiling, heck, even if they don't, with Evan Stewart being on the shelf now for probably all of the year, I think Decorian is going to get his chance to go well over that total. So yeah, I really like that pick. There you go, guys. Our picks, season long lineup presented by Underdog Fantasy. Again, you can play just $5, get $50 in an instant match if you use our code 3TechPod. You also get up to $1,000 of bonus deposit matched if you use our code as well. So we'd love to have you join us over on Underdog Fantasy. Play along with us. Send us your tickets, whatever you'd like to do. We would love to be involved and see those lineups all throughout the regular season. Guys, with that, I think let's land the plane. Let's bring it home. Week 0 previewed. Playoff graphics out in the wild. College football is back. I'm pumped. I know you guys are as well. We will not be doing the live show after week 0. I think we're going to probably have to figure out where that fits in. Trey getting ready to add a family member to the world, and so we'll figure out when the live shows come back, how they come back. But rest assured, we will have the recaps up very shortly to start your week, so stay tuned for all of that. Follow us at 3TechPod on all of our social channels if you are brand new to the show, and we are looking forward to talking ball with you all season long. For Trey Reeves and Garrett Turney, I'm Mitch Mason. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. College football's back, and we'll talk to you guys later.